For those of you that love talking about animals, from Sci News, Siat Mikorarum, new giant dinosaur found in Utah. Paleontologists announced today the discovery of a new predatory dinosaur that lived in what is modern day Utah around 100 million years ago. And now, from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. Welcome to Creature Kind Live Prehistoric News, and let's dive right back into the prehistoric news of the day. I have been wondering for years what this specific picture is supposed to represent. I always thought it was some exaggeration of a carnosaur. Now, let's take a look. If it is okay, so it is a theropod called Siats, and he's covered in feathers. I never noticed that.
Oh, I didn't realize. Yeah, you were saying it's an older discovery.
This dinosaur was a colossal predator, second only to the great Tyrannosaurus rex and perhaps Acrocanthosaurus in the North American fossil record. Acrocanthosaurus is basically the second to largest theropod dinosaur to exist in North America, but it existed far before T Rex. T Rex was around 67 million years ago over in Montana, while Acrocanthosaurus was living in Texas around 110 million years ago. So let's keep going. The prehistoric giant is named Siat Micararum. The genus, named Siat, refers to a cannibalistic monster from the mythology of the Ute Native American people. Well, I wouldn't doubt that most theropod dinosaurs, if not all, were cannibalistic. Its specific name acknowledges the Meeker family for their support for early career paleontologists at the Field Museum.
Aren't chickens cannibalistic?
Oh yeah, chickens. Yeah, most omnivorous birds today, if they have, let's say, a bad embryo inside of their egg, actually, it might not even be restricted to omnivorous birds. Pretty much all of them, they will eat it as well. Ciats mecorarum was over 9 meters long, or about 30 feet, and weighed more than 4 tons. Despite its large size, the dinosaur is not a close relative of Tyrannosaurus rex and other tyrannosaurs. Rather, it belongs to the Carcharodontosaurian group of theropods, whose more famous members include giants like the Argentinian Giganotosaurus. Um, so the Carcharodontosaurs are also part of the large lineage of theropods called the Carnosaurs, which consists of also the Spinosaurs, Metracanthosaurs, actually quite a few other groups. The tyrannosaurs, like T. rex, belong to the Coelurosaur group of theropods, which still has a number of species but is much smaller in variety compared to the Carnosaur lineage. Um, Ciats mecorarum belongs to a branch of the Carcharodontosaurian family tree that was previously unknown in North America.
Wait, the carnosaur was what was in the movie Dinosaur, right? A carnotaur.
Carnotaurus, yes, Carnotaurus, the Abelisaurs are carnosaurs. So they're more closely related to Carcharodontosaurus, Giganotosaurus than T Rex. Very distantly related to T Rex, despite their small arms compared to their body size. And also, when you look at the Abelisaurid arms, they're very stubby, and they don't have that same, or at least identical, sort of a structure that you see in most theropods, even the Tyrannosaurs. So also taking a look at some of the other animals, a bit more distantly related to Ceots, is Stochosaurus, which is an early relative of T. rex. This is a member of the Stechosaurid lineage of Tyrannosaurs. So Stochosaurus could reach somewhere around, okay, well, this is an earlier reconstruction. It's a bit bulky here, but 13 feet in length and probably weighs somewhere around 600 to 700 pounds.
He also has a big mouth.
Yeah, this one. I mean, I like the look, but the problem is his mouth is far too. It almost looks like a I wouldn't even call it a Torvosaurus. Almost like a small Giganotosaurus in this image. So very far off. This is a bit better, but it still has a more of. It's almost like a large Herrerasaurus.
I
Oh,
did it because of the sketching in it.
yeah, I still think it looks good. It's just has a bit more of a Herrerasaur sort of look. I think what also helps with this image is that it's giving it a more of like a Guanlong or Dilong sort of look, which are early relatives, early Chinese tyrannosaurs that lived in China during the late Jurassic, so around 147 million years ago. The
Well,
last,
the other one also looks huge.
this,
No, no,
oh,
that one.
yeah, this looks like it could be a 35-foot long predator. Let's go back. We were thrilled to discover the first dinosaur of its kind in North America and add to mounting evidence that dinosaurs were widely dispersed across the globe 100 million years ago. Well, it's also incredibly rare to find members of the Carcharodontosaurian family within North America. Also, carnosaurs in general aren't too common. Past the Jurassic, they start to become a lot less common in North America. So, after about 145 million years ago, you start to see a larger variety of the Coelurosaurs, or different species of the raptors or the dromaeosaurs. Um, I'm going to keep avian dinosaurs or the birds aside, but as well as tyrannosaurs popping up. Actually, at this point, tyrannosaurs they won't enter until the late Cretaceous. So after 90 million years ago. Let's keep going. Siats Mecararum comes from the middle of a 30 million year gap in the fossil record of North American large predatory dinosaurs, during which the top predator role changed hands from Carcharodontosaurians in the early Cretaceous to Tyrannosaurs in the late Cretaceous. It is odd that that occurred because the Carcharodontosaurians they didn't have any competition. Agrocanthosaurus was outside of you could say the smaller dromaeosaurs, there really was nothing to compete with him. So outside of possibly certain sauropods dying out, which still doesn't make a lot of sense because sauropods would still cling on to the late Cretaceous, to the end of the Cretaceous in North America. So why did a 40-foot long, 7-ton animal all of a sudden just go extinct? It's not like it didn't have access to food. It's a similar phenomenon to what we see with the giant Sharkotodus megalodon in the oceans. Around 2 million years ago, megalodon just disappears despite its prey still flourishing. Now, it did technically have competition, but it had competition throughout all of its reign. It doesn't really pinpoint to. It's just a big mystery as to why, like Megalodon in that instance went extinct, and then Acrocanthosaurus, or like this larger Carcharodontosaur, and all of a sudden disappears around 110 million years ago. So let's see. Um, where was I? Okay. The lack of fossils left paleontologists unsure about when this change happened and if Tyrannosaurus outcompeted Carcharodontosaurs. I don't agree with that. There was so little competition. Um, and the Tyrannosaurs were also small at that point, or assumed that niche following Carcharodontosaur extinction. Okay, I wouldn't say they were tiny. I was thinking of the um, specifically like one long small. You still had individuals that reached 20 feet in length or more at that point, but nothing to outcompete a large Carcharodontosaur. The Upper Cedar Mountain Formation is currently one of the only rock units known to produce fossils of both groups. So let's take another look. This is another member of the Carnosaur lineage. This is a species of Metracanthosaur, which is a lineage of the Carnosaurs. This is Concavinator. That's okay. Well, this Concavinator has a huge head compared to its body size. There were certain theropod dinosaurs that actually had quite large and long heads compared to their body size. If you look at something like T Rex, it's somewhat it just kind of matches his overall length. There were other species that actually had quite or just much longer skulls. Probably when you look at something like Carcharodontosaurus or Giganotosaurus, they're a bit longer compared to their body size. Um, this is a bit better. It is a big question as to what this display structure is on its tail, or it's not its tail, it's hips and then the upper part of its tail. This elongated vertebrae of concavinator. It's also been seen in certain other Metracanthosaurus species. Oh, and before I forget, this theropod could reach over 20 feet in length, around 5 meters, and probably weigh somewhere between 800 to 900 pounds.
Do you think this is a drawing or somebody did a model?
I think it's a drawing. Yeah. It looks pretty good. I think they added what feathers right here. It's kind of like Jurassic Park 3 Raptor, and then right under the arms. They gave it a um, very muscular definition. It looks good. Now, you also had some sauropods back in the early Cretaceous of North America. This animal is from Maryland and it lived in the States around 112 million years ago. And its name is Astrodon. And Astrodon could reach over 70 feet in length and probably weighs somewhere around 30 to 40 tons. And it is a member of the Brachiosaur lineage of sauropod dinosaurs. So, this is when, shortly before the Brachiosaurs would dwindle in overall variety, considering technically they already were in the early Cretaceous, but this is towards their last remaining species. So Astrodon could also reach a height of possibly around 30 feet or 9 meters. So it was one of the larger species at the time. It did have to be careful though, because it had to be cautious of different species of Carcharodontosaur. And then earlier relatives. Oh, well, I guess in this instance, this is probably an Astrodon having to deal with an Acrocanthosaurus. The problem is this Acrocanthosaurus. He looks like an Allosaurus. He's just very tall for an Allosaurus. It's really, actually, it's not a terrible Allosaurus specimen. Maybe the skull should be a bit smaller compared to its body size. Um, Also, you'd probably have it where Allosaurus was in a pack. Now, it's a big question with Acrocanthosaurus too. It's very risky for a 7-ton animal to take on a 30-ton animal all by itself. But this is interesting. You probably had it where Astrodon was living in small herds like Diplodocus or Brachiosaurus itself. So maybe consisting of 10 to 15 individuals. So let's go. Also, when looking at Acrocanthosaurus, unlike this individual, its arms would be much smaller compared to its body size. Even for Allosaurus, even though this might be a bit closer, they're slightly long. Also, Acrocanthosaurus had a much, it had like an elongated vertebrae, not to the extent of what you see on Concavenator, but I'd say like with what you see back here. That's probably Acrocanthosaurus's elongated vertebrae look. So, teeth of tyrannosaurs from the Cedar Mountain Formation indicate that the tyrannosaurs living alongside Seat's Mecararum were much smaller in stature and did not compete for the apex predator role. The huge size difference certainly suggests that tyrannosaurs were held in check by carcharodontosaurs and only evolved into enormous apex predators after the carcharodontosaurs disappeared. Finding Seats in the 30 million year predator gap tells us Carcharodontosaurians reigned supreme in North America for much longer than anyone had expected. Until recently, it is not usually talked about when it comes to different species of Carcharodontosaurians. It's also in this instance talking about the Metrocanthosaurs like Concavenator, except Concavenator would probably have to be a bit cautious of certain earlier Tyrannosaur species at the time, considering it only weighs maybe 900 pounds. Tyrannosaurs, even at that point, could easily take out a Concavenator.
How big were they?
Certain Tyrannosaur species could reach over 25 feet at that point and probably weigh around 2 tons, which is, um, they're more than capable. Even though at this point, they haven't reached their bone crushing ability. Um, Concavenator was just helpless at this point. Until recently, it was thought that continental rifting in the Cretaceous caused isolation between dinosaur faunas on different continents, and the early to middle Cretaceous faunas of North America were particularly isolated. That tends to be the look, even today, when it comes to the early Cretaceous period. It's rarely talked about when it comes to the Carcharodontosaur and Tyrannosaur coexistence. That picture is rapidly changing through discoveries such as Seat's Mecararum. And then last, we have another apex predator, which lived much earlier in time in the Cretaceous. This would be around 135 million years ago. So it's likely that Astrodon probably didn't coexist with Utahraptor. However, you might have had it where an early relative of Paluxysaurus possibly could have. And Paluxysaurus was found down in Texas. So, Utahraptor, this is basically a tyrannosaur that can jump and um, by raptor standards. Because the thing is that when you're looking at the skull of a Utahraptor, it's hard to tell by certain pictures, but it's over 2.5 feet in length is how massive this animal is. You could stick a Kodiak brown bear skull inside of the mouth of a Utah raptor. So, Utah raptor could reach somewhere around. Oh, that's his food. Okay, so this animal could reach around 17 feet in length but weigh somewhere around 1,100 pounds. That's a much heavier individual. Now, there is a thing where raptors, they have hollow bones. So do, well, any, when it comes to any dinosaur that's mentioned that it has hollow bones, many tend to think of it as a delicate animal. And that's far from the truth. These animals would have been relatively heavily built despite their hollow bones.
Didn't
So
sauropods have hollow bones?
they did. And even for a while, like it's made me think that they were quite delicate too. And I'm thinking, well, I guess that's why animals like Allosaurus back in the Jurassic could possibly easily take them out.
What was that, 15 years ago you thought that?
Uh, yeah. Okay. So when talking about yeah, Utah raptor, this animal, it's not meant for slicing off flesh. The thing is that when looking at the skull structure of this animal, as well as the way the teeth are shaped, this animal is meant for grabbing onto something and crushing it. Other species of dromaeosaur, like the velociraptors, they're more meant for shearing off flesh, and they have a very thin, narrow skull. It's completely the opposite with Utahraptor. And this animal had a bite force of around 2,000 pounds per square inch. Something like a spotted hyena is somewhere around 1,200 pounds per square inch, or a Kodiak brown bear 1,250. So this animal also, when it came to attacking its prey, specifically with its claws, many tend to look at raptors as just slicing their prey and creating a lot of blood loss, which still would have happened. However, something like Utah Raptor is going to just keep on pushing it further inside, and it's just not going to let go. This thing was a
Wait,
bit
so you're saying this is like T-Rex biting down on something?
Yes, for the time, or for raptors in general. So this is why it's very possible that Utah raptor was hunting sauropods, and this was though before Acrocanthosaurus. If it existed with Acrocanthosaurus, I think Acrocanthosaurus would have avoided a pack of Utah raptors unless they hunted in packs. But this was one of the most deadly I say at this point in the early Cretaceous period, it's around 135 million years ago, was the most powerful predator. So let me know in the comments who your favorite species of Utah dinosaur is. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. Welcome to This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, subscribe if you love talking about animals, and share this show with everyone you know because nothing is better than all animals all the time.